All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us again for this new session organized by the Global Supply Chain Council. My name is Max Henry, and I'm going to be your host today. And today's discussion is actually focusing on one of the toughest area of supply chain, which is inventory management. Companies across Asia, the Middle East, and Europe are trying to balance accuracy, agility, working capital, service levels, and sustainability, all while dealing with more volatility than ever. AI and predictive analytics are reshaping our forecasting. Quick commerce is shifting demand patterns, and global networks continue to adjust to disruption. Our panel today brings hands-on experience from multiple regions and industry, and we'll keep today's discussion practical, grounded, and very honest about what works and what does not work. And before we begin, a quick note on the format. This session is fully interactive. We will prioritize your questions or the question from the live audience. You can also submit your questions at any time using the question mark button at the bottom of the screen. Please avoid as much as you can to post questions in the chat. Also, I want to highlight that we only have 55 minutes, and we'll make sure to wrap up before the end of the hour. So if you have another meeting at the top of the hour, we will have again a few minutes for transition. Our panelists will begin by introducing themselves, and after that, we'll start with a few prepared questions to frame the discussion, then open it up to the audience questions very quickly. So let's get started first with the introduction. Maybe we'll get each of you to introduce themselves. And by the way, we're waiting for another panelist to join us, Anirban. So hopefully he's going to make it. So maybe we'll start with you, Sankalp, and you can go ahead and introduce yourself here. Make sure to unmute here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sankalp Dutt. I work with L'Oreal in India, and I take care of the e-commerce supply chain, which includes a strategy across the platforms, what kind of inventory that we plan, what kind of customer interactions, customer connects, and stakeholder management that we do, as well as any kind of new emerging channels and markets that we start to explore. We do a test and pilot around that as well. I have been working in this area of supply chain planning, customer facing customers, customer roles, as well as distribution for the last 19 years, and happy to be on this chat to answer some of the questions.
Thanks again, Sankalp. Great. We have Federico also joining us. Go ahead, Federico.
Yeah, I'm Federico. I'm the Chief Supply Chain Officer of Higher Europe, so the European consortium of the Higher Smartphone Group, the biggest home appliance manufacturer globally. I'm a nerd about supply chain, engineer by background, and a multiple year experience in home appliance manufacturing, automotive, and a brief stint in retail supply chain. Happy to be here.
Okay. We have Ankit also joining us. Welcome, Ankit. Go ahead.
Hello everyone, my name is Ankit Kulkarni. I work for Aqua Power based at Dubai location. I head the material management, inventory management, supply chain planning, and supply chain performance for the all the Aqua Power assets, specifically in O&M side. I bring the experience from the automotive, healthcare, manufacturing, and renewable energy background. Throughout my career, I have led the global supply chain and procurement operations, deployed ERPs, deployed the e-sourcing tools. I have built the BI ecosystems, worked on a multi-million euro spare parts portfolio, and of course, procurement strategies and a lot of supply chain improvement projects.
Great. Thank you. We have Michael also joining us. Go ahead, Michael. Welcome.
Hi, Max. Hi, everybody. So I'm Michael with Fling AI. If you haven't heard of us, we're a Singapore-based AI platform for warehouse inventory optimization. So using cameras and drones and AI, we can speed up the stock checking process and reduce the number of people that are used in that process from like 80 people over 3 days to just a few people in a matter of hours. So we're targeting saving warehouses time, money, and providing that enhanced visibility that I'm sure we'll be discussing today while improving safety for workers. So we work with some of the largest 3PLs in Southeast Asia, and happy to have this chat. Thanks.
Okay, great. And we're also still missing Anirban Sanyal, who is trying to log in. Apparently, we has a connection issue. Hopefully, will be with us in a few minutes. For some of you who are just joining us again, I want to remind everybody that this is going to be an interactive session. So if you have any question you would like to ask, you can do this at any time. Just click on the question mark located at the bottom of the screen. We will prioritize those questions. So feel free again to ask us those questions and we will take them as they come. So maybe we get before we get started and go through all these questions that we prepared. I just wanted to get a view from each of you about inventory in general and what probably has changed post-COVID in that new normal. What practice do you think have stayed when it comes to inventory management, and what no longer works in 2025? Yeah. Anybody?
Yeah, I can take the question. Okay. So the biggest challenge from the COVID is you can say that the variability is the new baseline. And what has changed permanently, if you ask me, the static safety stock settings, what we rely on aesthetics, the form, let's say form aesthetics doesn't work now. Now we rely on the dynamic buffers. We look at the safety times. At the same time, if you look at the lead times are, let's say, nowhere static. It's unreliable most of the places. Uh, Something which has changed is the simulation-based planning we have to look at. And SNOP, first of all, it's no longer just like a discussion or a monthly meeting. It requires a weekly inputs, bi-weekly inputs. Adding to this, what still works, if you ask me, the segmentation, the complete lean fundamentals still works. On top of this, the strong master data. If you don't have the strong master data as well as the right process governance, it's still this is still the baseline. And
Okay.
yeah, I think that's
You
something
know,
from
go
my
ahead.
end.
Go ahead, Ankit. Yeah.
Yeah. And what's no longer gonna work, let's say going forward in 2026, or let's say is something more into the a monthly meetings. It's the approach will be more towards the predictive one. The backward looking business intelligence is not gonna work. So it's more on the simulation modeling basis planning we are looking at it.
Okay. All right. Anybody else on what has changed?
Well, I
Oh,
remembered in the middle of COVID, there was suddenly a big emphasis, of course, on having masks and all kinds of procedures attached to that. That's mostly gone away, just to be very practical about, you mentioned COVID, right? And yet, I think the concept of collecting inventory information with a crush of, with dozens of people in a small space, I think that's something that maybe is done less now. There's more of an awareness that that's not a great thing to have so many people in a small space. But of course, a lot of the other practices around inventory, I think, are still important and unchanged.
Okay, Federico.
Yeah, I mean, my experience is that during COVID, there was a lot of hype around building resilient supply chain. Inventory started to be used as a matter of resilience in the chain. We probably overdid it in terms of supply chain professional. And then we got this massive wave of inflation and interest rate that somehow grounded us again. So I think a lot of statement about resiliencies ended up in not being active any longer. Whereas what I've seen in my experience is a lot of investment done in terms of technology during COVID to actually build better visibility, to build better process in terms of sales and operation planning. What investment done that stayed with us, as well as probably the role of supply chain professional in the C-suite in terms of driving some of these inventory decisions that are kind of a leftover of that period.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. Sankap?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I would just say that till sometime back, we were still a very reactive system in place across the globe. People were still, I mean, the manufacturers and the retailers were still used to a very steady kind of a demand. I think what we have seen is post-COVID, a lot has moved towards digitization, which has also led to the growth on the way consumer buys today. So you see now that more and more people are buying online, right? And that has also led to a little bit of the dynamic nature in which the demand fluctuates. So I agree to some of the discussion points that were made, but I also feel that more and more the planning cycles would end up changing. I think traditionally people and companies have still worked on a slightly longer horizon of planning cycles and the frequency at which that is reviewed. I think that will more and more change because from those monthly cycles to those weekly cycles, and now people are getting those demand sensing softwares in place, which will review your situation in terms of demand, in terms of stock availability, etc., on a daily basis. And I think that is one big change that has happened across the industries.
Okay, so before we start talking about technology and AI, what core fundamentals do companies, do you think, still get wrong when it comes to inventory management? Again, regardless of the maturity of the technology that they use, what do they get wrong when it comes to inventory management? Yeah, Federico. Yeah.
I mean, I think one of our biggest issue that seemed a bit changed during COVID, but somehow came back is we still see a lot of time inventory as either a cost or immobilized cash on our balance sheet. And we somehow lost a bit this conception that inventory is what define the final edge in operating supply chain, is the final risk management we can do. We still do a lot of window dressing of our numbers, and I guess that's common, especially with publicly listed company. We still do a lot of quarterly window dressing, year-end inventory lending, etc. Whereas the effort done in placing the inventory where it really matters, so where it can really edge our risk, somehow lost a bit of steam the more we went into the old practice of keep reducing this inventory.
Okay. Anybody else? Yeah, and Kate?
So let's talk about the three fundamentals which most of the companies still get wrong. And I know AI, we are talking about AI being introduced into the all planning softwares, okay, as well as all the ERPs. The three fundamentals which we talk about always is the master data, okay, and we are talking about the whole master data, which talks about the parameters, your replenishment strategies. So this is somewhere, if your master data is if your input, your data maintenance is still not at par, then of course you will always have issues. The second part is about the wrong segmentation. So you cannot have a fixed rules for the same category of the items. Okay, I would say Sankal would let's say agree with me on this side because they are into the FMCG side as well as consumer goods. So they would do a lot of different type of segmentations and scenario based planning. The wrong segmentation is one of the fundamental which most of the organizations gets it wrong. So they have to do it product wise, category wise, even seasonality part. A lot of things needs to be, let's say, taken care. The third is SNOP. Still, I would say most of the organization they just treat it as a meeting. And it's an unfortunate thing to say, but then uh, and that is most of the cause of the firefighting also. So if the proper alignment is not there, then again it's leading to nowhere.
Okay. Yeah. Michael?
Yeah, I could agree with Federico on immobilized cash on the balance sheet and Keith on master data, and I think that kind of links together to say if companies are treating inventory or warehousing as a cost center, that might be the fundamental thing that companies still get wrong. I mean, in some sense it is, but in another sense, with better order delivery, better intelligence, better understanding of where your inventory is, it can be a competitive advantage to the product owners. I guess this is an audience of product owners. I'm typically talking to other to 3PLs who are typically our customer, but it can also be an advantage, of course, for 3PLs if they're competing for business and they want to warehouse products, and they're faster and they have a better understanding of where the inventory is in their warehouse, then that can be a competitive advantage to winning business, not just a matter of treating it like, oh, it's a thing we have to minimize the cost of and let's make it as cheap as possible. And I think Amazon realized this years ago online when they talk about website responsiveness. If you can reduce the the amount of time it takes to respond on a website from 5 seconds to 4 seconds, it makes a big difference how many customers will buy the product. And so I think it's the same with inventory. If you have a higher level of accuracy, if you have a higher responsiveness, let's call it, then that can have a major impact on your business. It's very hard to model that in an NPV analysis, but it's very important. And the companies that do model it correctly, I think, benefit from that.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, Sankap?
One thing that I wanted to highlight, and I think a lot of companies do this, is that they think that let's say there is a demand sensing tool in place, right? A lot of companies think that you once you get a tool, you will get good results. But definitely the basis for any tool, any machine learning tool, any AI driven tool is to have the right data or the right feed going into it, whether it is in terms of the insights, the intelligence that we put, or what is supposed to happen,
Exactly.
what is going to happen, etc. I think people think that tool is there and then the results will be there. I think that is one big mistake which people think that, or assumption that that things will work this way. But however, it's the other way around. Once you have a tool in place, you require so many things to work to make the tool work. And I think that is where a lot of people struggle. And then they think that the tool is not working. Rather, what happens is that the inputs to the tool. So what Ankit was mentioning in terms of the data, master data, if you put in garbage, you will get garbage out. So it's that, I think, ultimately.
Yeah, Michael, you wanted to react on this, yeah?
Just agreeing. Yeah. Garbage in, garbage out.
Okay. All right. Cool. Let's go. We have some questions coming in, but let me take a few more questions that we prepared. I wanted to get your take. So we start talking about AI and predictive analytics, which are reshaping, planning, and warehousing and inventory management in general. Where are you seeing some real measurable improvements in inventory accuracy and replenishment? Are you guys already using it? And also is this really happening now, or is still overpromised already? What's your take on this about AI? Yeah, Federico. Yeah.
Yeah, we're using a couple of AI solution, or I would rather say machine learning solution to manage our supply chain. We tested a couple of them, didn't work out, but there are two specifically that have a significant impact. One is demand sensing. Again, not nothing something particularly new, but in our case, it's helping us a lot in taking some smart day-to-day decision. But I would like to echo here what was said before. It's not just the technology itself that is helping us, but is having a background in terms of process and capability and people that can take smart intelligence solution out of data that a machine learning is telling you. The other area that we explored, we did significant development is in the area of lead time prediction, especially when we think about ocean freight, when container will arrive and so on. That's something that allow us to optimize a bit the way we operate in terms of safety stock, inventory, and react to the natural, I would say, variability of the complex board that is the sea freight.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, Ankit.
So let's look at the AI's strength as of today is about prediction, pattern recognition, as well as the scenario support. However, I do not agree that you can still go for a full automation using AI. No. Okay. So what we are also, by the way, using, but then it's a partial AI and machine learning. We have deployed IBP last year, and look at us as a very unique industry where we have the assets to manage. We are not buying a raw material where we buy raw material, we have a monthly S&OP cycles, we process it and we sell it in the market. No, we produce power and we produce water. So we the major challenge is to how let's say what is our uptime for assets, what is the reliability. So now looking at the what AI is delivering at this point of time, use cases, and I'm talking about let's say across industries and the tools available also, a predictive analysis, of course. Then you have the all your MRP parameters optimization, which of course AIT look at the record, let's say the pattern, and it still can give you better, let's say suggestions. Third is which we have also deployed for one of the areas is spare parts degradation risk. This is something we tried to combine the data of equipments, machine run hours, and looking at our inventory. So somewhere we try to incorporate all the data. This actually gives a good, let's say, insights to us. And we have deployed uh, some customized solution within SAP, which triggers these kind of warnings for us also. And supplier related risk early warnings, which of course based on the lead time, geographical conditions, cost, a lot of parameters, let's say your quality parameters. So something which you can look at the, let's say, patterns, and then it can give you what where AI is overpromised, I would say, is something the full autonomous planning. You know, at this point of time, we are not ready. Industries are not yet ready. The
You
second
said
is
you said full autonomous. What was that? I'm just
the
curious.
full autonomous planning. We are not yet
Oh,
ready
planning.
at this
Yeah.
point.
So
Yeah,
where there's no analyst, it just spits out the answers to the manager. Yeah.
is at this point of time, and I'll talk about it, and then it's like a black box recommendation without any business context. So you always need to have logic building, scenario based planning. Without just you without the business context, you cannot rely on the full autonomous planning. Third one is most important. You assume that the AI will fix the bad process. No, it cannot. So fundamentals should be there. It's about the data, it's about the process, it's about the business context and the critical thinking. So if we are able to work on these four things, and I'm sure there will be some sort of we will be moving towards a 75% automation. 100% I'm still not sure. Transactional things is fine. We are talking about the strategic value here, not the transactional ones.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, Michael, yeah, you want to say something on this? Yeah, you're muted. You're still muted, Michael.
Thanks. I agree that companies are too eager to automate the analysis work when in fact that's where they should be putting more human emphasis, I think. And in fact, it's the data collection that can be automated today. So you free the workers from this monotony of collecting data and tabulating it and organizing it, and instead freeing them up to do what they should be doing is looking at the data that's been collected autonomously and seeking out insights and figuring out what the right thing to do with that information is. So, of course, eventually everything will be automated and we'll be relaxing on the beach together, Max and everybody here. But for
Yeah.
now, we still have work to do. The AI is not perfect, and really, let's just employ the AI for that data collection. So, pragmatically automating the stock checking work that teams do to collect the data. That's where I see the real measurable improvements in inventory accuracy that's out there, and we're deployed in many warehouses that are taking advantage of that now.
Okay, yeah, Sankap.
Yeah, I agree. I think before we move the needle to say that we deploy AI into areas which are more today human dependent, I think it's to figure out how this AI would work actually in some of the non-value added tasks that we today work on. I mean, just a very basic example, we are working on something where we are trying to deploy generative AI to work on email management. For example, I mean, we have a whole considering I'm from a FMCG background, so we have a huge chunk of customer orders that comes, and there are tons of emails that flow day in day out. So how do you use AI to structure those emails and read those emails and process and give out a desired response. And we are still in the process of incorporating it to say that how many emails that we get on a day are structured emails, which could be just replied directly by AI. And we see this kind of system actually getting deployed in a lot of places. You have those chatbots, etc., where basic queries can be answered. So I think those are the tasks which can be automated with the help of AI. But I think in areas which include or involve a high level of sensitivity in terms of weather analysis or prediction, I think it's still some level of human intervention is required at the moment.
So when it comes to the warehouse and the inventory environment, Sankap, you're not using any kind of AI right now at this point.
Uh, we are using machine learning, etc., in demand sensing a little bit. But again,
Okay.
it still kind of requires some level of human intervention in terms of giving in the right inputs.
Okay. Interesting. All right. So we have a couple of questions already popping up, and I don't want to wait too much because otherwise we're going to be running out of time. So let me start taking those questions one by one. Again, if you have any question, there's still time, of course, for you to ask for it. So just click on that question mark at the bottom of the screen, and we'll be able, hopefully, to take them before the end of this session. Let me start with this one. I think this was in reference to our early discussion about COVID. So someone, Aisha is asking, are we overstocking because of fear after COVID, or is this the new normal?
If I may take this, I don't think we are overstocking. With the fear of something unanticipated that would come in. I mean, that would always be the case. Then, I mean, I don't think any company would want to just run on a basis of some fear. Definitely, there is insights that we can work on. I mean, those insights could be internal to an organization in terms of, let's say, there is a factory shutdown planned, there is a holiday coming in, etc., etc., or any kind of, but then there are also some things like a geopolitical situations that are arising. I mean, very famous example is the recent Red Sea crisis that happened a few years back, right? I mean, because of some conflicts, if some area through which your containers pass does not work, then obviously it will lead to delays in terms of, and leads to supply variability. And for that, you will need to plan. I mean, how fast you are able to react to it. And again, I don't think we can uh, predict 100% of it, but I think organizations are planning and anticipating more now in terms of what can happen rather than just uh, you know uh, planning basis an event which has happened in the past, I would say.
Okay, yeah, Federico?
I do have a bit of an unorthodox view. I think overstock is not an absolute. Stock is a function of your supply chain as a function and a function of your risk appetite. So overstock technically happens when your level of inventory is not aligned with your risk appetite. If in general we see more stock, and again, I don't think that's a general comment in all supply chain. In some of them might happen. I think is simply because some of these companies have a much lower tolerance to risk, and they want to be more cautious in their decision.
Okay, interesting. All right, feel free again to raise your hand or unmute yourself if you want to respond to any of those questions. Let's move on to the next one. Uh, okay, so Yanisa is asking, what's the best way to reduce old or slow stock without killing cash flow? Anybody would like to respond to that? Give some help or
I,
advice? Yeah, go ahead.
I
Yeah.
can take it. I think if you already have stock, you already killed your cash flow. So the only thing you can do now is, let's say, ex post disaster management. You need to get rid of it as soon as possible. The more you wait, the lower the value will be in the future.
Okay, yeah.
I,
Ankit?
I can I can suggest a prevent, but now it's a reactive action. So, but then you can do a preventive one also. Classify your stocks into the aging buckets, and then you have restrictions in place. Let's say for the typical product-based manufacturing companies, your replenishment runs through via proper MPS and then proper, let's say, SNOP plan. Whereas you don't have such things in place, right replenishment strategy and parameters and segmentation of the items, then have inventory aging in place and have your restrictions in place accordingly. So you will not end up having more buffer and inventory being built up, especially on the old and slow stock perspective.
And
Okay.
again, I would say that I'm sorry, I didn't raise my hand. Sorry, Max.
No, no, it's okay. It's okay. Go ahead.
I haven't been in class in a long time. Sorry. I definitely think being too focused on collecting data and not thinking enough about the data you've collected. Many warehouses I visit, they have a process of a cycle count where they're checking, but they're not doing anything with that data. They're just collecting it like it's a thing that they have to do. But instead, if you group, as you say, segment the stock into different categories of fast and slow, then you can actually take action. So I think the barrier might not be I mean, everybody knows they should do that, but I think the barrier might be that they're distracted by spending too much time collecting data and not enough, which gives them not enough time to actually act.
Yeah, Sankalp?
I think I think the question here is more to do with if it has already happened. But if it has not happened for sure, then either first thing to check is whether do we have that kind of visibility. If we already know that there is something slowly aging, then definitely what helps is to plan and anticipate in advance, saying that, okay, now 12 months left for expiry, the stock expiry, or let's say 18 months left to stock expiry, then what do we do? Uh, and then I think just to keep in mind, because a lot of times it's companies have those goals to say sustainability goals to say, oh, we don't want any destruction, we don't want any landfills happening, etc. But then when we know that the last option for everyone is that products will be destroyed, so then any other option better than that becomes the most viable solution that you can opt for. Assuming in this case, let's say if things are already slow or aged and that cannot be used, there are options that a lot of companies do in terms of donations, in terms of various kind of liquidation support that they can offer and sales. I believe there are a lot of companies who take products which are let's say not expired but closer to an expiry range and sell in markets where these products are not available. I mean, that also to a certain extent is a decent idea than destruction. And maybe one of the other options that a lot of companies also do is do some kind of a liquidation sales within the organization, outside of the organization. So yeah, I think if we know that the end result is destruction, then an idea to avoid or get some kind of money back is to have these kind of liquidation supports in place.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, interesting. All right. Again, if you have any other questions for the group, feel free to post your question by clicking on the question mark. I see some new ones already. So let's continue with those questions. And so far, they're quite interesting. So let's move on. Okay, Shandan is asking, or is saying, inventory planning in current scenario is less about just stock levels and more about resilience, agility, and integration and cost focus. Do you agree?
Yes, I agree. Uh, a lot of companies are moving towards more agile solutions. It could be, multiple production batches in a month than just having a one large production batch uh, to ensure that you are producing what is needed and then how fast you can actually make it available for the consumer. I think that is what most of the supply chains are trying to deliver these days. Uh, and I think what that leads to is that you don't then necessarily keep very high inventory covers, but rather focus on agility to deploy those stocks faster to the consumer than to keep sitting with the kind of stocks and then wait that there will be a requirement that will pop up.
Okay, that's interesting. So it's not about all keeping low levels of inventory. Do you guys agree, Ankit, Federico, and Michael also, if you also see this, you know?
Eh, the approach is changing, and then of course, all these parameters, what the gentleman is asking, it is part of these kind of strategies nowadays. It's no longer just like the levels.
Yeah, Federico?
I would even extend a bit broader. I think inventory planning in the current world is more about supply chain design and supply chain decision that has to do with resilience decision, the kind of agility design, so the design of your supply chain to be agile and how you integrate. And then the pure, I would say, mechanical activity, so the planning is the consequence of all those decisions taken upfront.
Okay. Interesting. All right, let's move on to the next question. Someone is asking, how do you manage inventory across multiple countries when lead times keep changing? That's an interesting one. Anybody has experience with that? Yeah, Federico, yeah. Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, let me contextualize. I manage a multi-country supply chain. We sell all over Europe and big chunk of Middle East and Africa, and most of my sourcing is in the Far East, China specifically. So I need to deal daily with changing lead time and variable lead time as well. Um, our approach is actually twofold. One is we have clear option, decision-making option that we can do. So can we move inventory from country A or country B in a economic sensitive view? And you cope this one with kind of daily reaction. We look at what's happening now in every single day, and we decide which option to take and which option we can't simply not activate.
Okay. Yeah, Michael, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with a daily view. I think one of the biggest customer responses we've ever had is when we deployed Fling 6.0, which had live data feeds. So it's amazing how much of a difference. You'd think it wouldn't. I mean, the data is very similar, but when it's as close to live as possible, when the data is as close to real time as possible, it becomes much more actionable and immediately usable. Whereas if the data is even a little bit stale, it's harder to know what to do with that. And certainly, if we're talking about inventory across multiple countries, where you may have never visited that facility, or you have less visibility into there, having that kind of accountability and information right there, if you're managing stock levels or where you're going to put things, or you're making decisions, having that information, I think, is really, really important.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, okay.
my experience from the previous, let's say from the Philips, where we had the multimodality manufacturing across the different countries. So the best practice to overcome any kind of, let's say, demand variations as well as the lead time factor, you need to go for VMI. That's the best practice across the industry where you go for VMI, then your lead time is actually the transit time. And for that, of course, you need to have a right, let's say, right analytics in place. You always need to look at your demand. I understand getting the right SNOP and demand accuracy is a bit tough task, but you can still look at considering the patterns, what kind of, let's say, delays you have observed, lead time patterns, and what is the criticality of that supplier or the item. Use Kralik index to define your supplier, right inventory segmentation, how crucial is that product, what is the geography, what is your let's say transportation you target, which is the air, via vessel. All these parameters, if you take into the account, you should be able to, let's say, define what, let's say, the levels you want to keep it with the supplier via VMI as well as in your, let's say, plant or let's say warehouses.
Okay, great. Thank you for those insights. Let's move on to those next questions. Uh, so Nadia is asking, is anyone seeing AI helping with supply delays, or is it still very manual? Supply delays. Does anybody? Yeah, Michael?
I mean, that might come right back to what Enki just finished saying, which is if you move to a VMI, like a vendor managed a model, then you have fewer decision makers making the allocation decision. And so it may not be so much about whether, again, like earlier talking about slapping on an AI band-aid to a problem to try to solve it. If you have, lots of different decision makers all trying to make decisions, they're going to have to maintain large buffers and supply buffers to account for this. But if you have one centrally managed decision maker, then that can be helpful. Of course, the people listening here may not have the ability to re-architect their entire supply chain, so that may not be an option for them. But yeah, I definitely agree with Ankit.
Yeah, Federico?
Not particularly positive. We don't see much AI helping us in dealing with the delay per se. We see more an effect on managing the aftermath of the delay, so how we can have the right supply chain in place in terms of inventory to minimize the impact of those delay. And then I would just echo what Ankit was saying about WMI. I think a lot of the improvement that can happen is through reducing the number of steps between consumption and prediction and supply to make sure that the information is less distorted.
Okay. All right, cool. Thank you. Keep asking questions. We still have another 20 minutes before we wrap up. So let's move on to the next one. Okay, Brian is asking, how do you deal with planners who don't trust the AI forecast even when it's better? That's a good point. Good question. Sankapi.
Is it a tool problem or a people problem? I'm not able to understand. Yeah, but I think the only way to work with this is to show some data, right? One way, I mean, when we were implementing our forecasting tools in India, was that we had a first level of statistical forecast, and then we also had a final consensus forecast. What we end up doing was to show them over the last 6 months that what kind of category of SKUs, or let's say segments of SKUs, has a better statistical forecast than a final consensus forecast versus, let's say, some other SKUs. So I think if you have data over the last few months, years, I think it is easy to convince people that to work in a certain way. But yeah, obviously, without data, if somebody says that yes, this is a new tool and it will work, and hence you should agree to it, it might not be the right solution.
And in your company, do you have an AI forecast right now, or?
We have. So that is why, I mean, we are still developing. It's still in work in progress. But what we have analyzed is that certain SKUs, certain group of SKUs have a better stat forecast versus, let's say, a final consensus forecast where multiple inputs go in.
Okay, cool. And Kate, yeah?
I think it's a typical change management issue. So no matter it's just an AI tool or any kind of tool you deploy, there is always a trust issue. People are afraid to accept the change. Okay. So if the change management is handled in a proper way, I think then it should solve. It's not just about the planning tool or AI. It's about no matter what you deploy. Okay. Whether it could be the e-procurement tool, it's always like in resistance. The best way is always, I think I will go back to what Sankalp mentioned, few skills. I think it's about to start with the pilot to build the trust. So if you have the pilot which can show the results, that will build the confidence and trust. I'm pretty sure people will see the results and then they will start using it.
Yeah, Federico, yeah.
To answer your question, Max, yes, we do have AI forecast. We do have forecast generated via AI, both for our, I would say, tactical planning, SNOP, but also for our operational planning, demand sensing. It's a change management issue, as Ankit was saying. What we are doing now is, first of all, we present the data in a very precise way. That is, we look at forecast value added, meaning is the work of planner adding value versus the pure machine. And I know it's a bit brutal, but when we show to people, look, you do a lot of work, but at the end of the day, we don't measure anything. Sorry, it's just not needed. The second thing is we use a mantra in my company that is customers don't pay us to forecast, customers pay us to get the product. And we use this one to somehow move a lot our working capacity away from pure demand planning, more into inventory planning, supply chain design, to make sure that we use the brain of people where really they add value rather than just getting in this kind of competition versus the machine.
Okay, yeah, Michael.
Right. So, yeah, the question, how do you deal with planners who don't trust the AI? I think this is a very basic question. Many people are saying about it's a great question about how to get people to be on board a new any kind of new solution. And I think we've had for example, we've had a customer where they loved our drone inventory solution. The product owner also loved the drone inventory solution, but the auditor was suspicious about whether a drone taking a picture, does that count as truly taking stock compared with a human with a clipboard checking a box. So it's just a kind of let's say prejudice against a robot versus a human, if you will, because the data is definitely the same. In fact, there's a picture, which is even better than trusting a person with a checkbox on a piece of paper. So that sort of thing, that skepticism, I think, is normal. Where we've tried to address this is now we have every photo that we take is time stamped and sourced and actually tracked if the customer wants on a blockchain. This has been something that customers have shown a lot of interest in Europe, less so much in Southeast Asia, but provenance tracking for supply chain tracing and being able to share this information across the supply chain, this may increase trust. Maybe not in an AI solution, but in information in general that's being used.
Okay, all right. Let's take the next question. Someone is asking, any tips for getting finance on board when we need more inventory to protect service? Yeah, Federico, yeah.
Um, it has been a long effort for me. We moved the company, especially our finance community, into thinking in terms of flow, direct contribution margin, rather than pure EBIT. And some of the decisions become very obvious after.
Okay, yeah. Anybody else? And Kate, Sankap, what is your do you find yourself, trying to convince the finance guys about your inventory level?
No, I think what I feel is there are top-down uh, mandates that will be in place. It's just about being a supply chain professional. You need to work with constraints, and this could be one of the constraints. And again, I feel inventory is not just a finance topic; it's equally a supply chain topic. So we have to manage efficiently, and again, it's not about just convincing one person, but it's to say that okay, there are constraints, and every company works with certain constraints. How do we then say that yes, this is my constraint, and I have to ensure that I give my best possible service in the given scenario.
Okay, cool. Let's move on to the next question. We have more coming in, and we have only a few minutes before we wrap up. Our sales team change forecast every week. How do you stop this chaos? Federico, yeah.
The first question is this adding value? Meaning they change forecast, but the forecast is better the previous week. If not, that's quite obvious. It just doesn't add value. And is it creating a distortion? I mean, can you have a better forecast if you just apply algorithm rather than human input? And you would just get the answer. I mean, and the number makes the talk.
All right. Sankap, Ankit, yes, I saw you
I think
laughing, reacting to it. Yeah.
no, I agree to it. I mean, is it adding value? Is it some new information which we had not captured in the previous forecast that we had already? Because I don't think today. I mean, when we change forecast weekly, is my planning cycles, is my production planning, etc., is my actual manufacturing in tune with that weekly change? Firstly, we need to understand that. If not, then it is more about managing the stock levels to cater to a certain demand. If it is just demand change, let's say a customer has come and asked us something extra, that is more of a demand change, which we then have to manage within the set of stocks levels. There are stocks that we have and see and talk about prioritization between customers, etc. But again, if it does not adding value for sure, then it doesn't make sense to keep changing forecasts.
Yeah, Ankit.
I think I agree to what Federico and Sankalp have also mentioned. So if it is just the change of demand or a right allocation to be done, one customer changing the priority. I think that should be managed within the given set of, let's say, the inventory or let's say the plan in place. However, if you're talking about a big change from the 1 week's forecast and now, then I would say just first look at the trend. What is the percentage we are talking about it? What is the change of percentage week on week you are getting it? Then you really, all of you need to get in a meeting room and think about a solution in place. Otherwise, if it is not making any impact, the change is not at all like a tangible one, then I think it's okay. Just leave it that. Just right
Okay.
allocation in the supply chain.
All right. Thank you for the question. Let's move on to the next one. So Yanisa is asking again, our demand is saying our demand is so volatile. How do you set safety stock that does not explode cost?
Have you guys done? I would say, please do the right segmentation and your ABC classification plus. That's very basics. I would say it's a fundamental to look at your right ABC classification of the items, map your lead time from the suppliers, what kind of replenishment strategy you have it, where the supplier is located, what is the demand variation you are expecting it. Is it a tender-driven business or like you have a right what type of business it is, a make to stock, let's say order to stock, what kind of, let's say, the business you're talking about it, and what is the criticality of these items. If you put all these things together, then you have to look at your right ABC being agreed with your, let's say, management, including your finance, and you define that component. This is what I want to do it, and what is the impact behind it.
Yeah, Federico?
Yeah, I guess that, if you're looking at stock impact related to stock driven by demand volatility, probably you need to revise the design of your supply chain, meaning either SKU classification, lead time, but probably even something more deep where you produce what is the customer acceptable lead time versus your own supply chain lead time. So there is really designed to be thought behind. And personally, if you have very high volatile demand, demand-driven MRP, demand-driven operating model helps a lot to stabilize that. Again, it's not the unique solution. There are other ways to do it, but yes, I think it's more about the design rather than the single decision on inventory.
Yeah, Michael, yeah.
Well, yeah, I'd agree with everything that's been said so far. I think this can get complex if we're talking about a multi-warehouse, multi-distribution center scenario. Then you can really think about this. But basically, I would say the safety stock should not be one fixed amount, but you want to make that itself dynamic to compensate for the fact that the demand is dynamic. And again, it comes back to freeing up your organizational, mental, personnel headspace to be able to perform the planning function and the forecasting function and be less focused on mere data collection, and to make sure you do have a system in place that has live or close enough to live information visibility on your stock level. So that's the first step to solving any problem, is knowing that you're even in the problem. It sounds like the person is close to being in that situation. So that's the next step, is to plan your way out of it.
Okay, great. Thank you very much again. It looks like we lost Sankalp. We disappeared from this call, but you probably have a technical issue. We were also supposed to have Anliaban. We tried. You saw him coming in and coming out. He tried to get in, but again, it was difficult for him to join. So hopefully we'll get in next time. I want to thank you again very much for your time. Thank you very much, Michael and Keith, Federico, and Salkalp, if you are also listening to us. Thanks for all your questions. I think we had some interesting questions today. Very different type of questions, but they were all interesting anyway. We didn't get to again to uh, discuss and probably cover a lot of number of topics that we prepared, but that's okay. We can always schedule another discussion on the same topic, inventory management. Like I said earlier, it's a difficult topic for a lot of people, and it's never easy for a lot of supply chain logistic professionals to manage it properly, especially when you're dealing with multiple countries across the region. So we'll again do this discussion earlier in the year, in probably Q1 or Q2 in 2026. So thanks again for being with us. Thanks for your insight. And again, if you missed part of the session, part of the discussion, We're going to be sharing the replay tomorrow. So you'll be able to watch again the replay in our replay section on our chant.net platform. Thank you guys. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Max. That was great.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye, everybody.